Thank you for joining us this afternoon at this online open day for the Journalism and Publishing programme at London College of Communication, University of the Arts, London. My name's Simon Hinde. I'm the Programme Director of Journalism and Publishing, and I'll be talking a bit about our courses and about the college and the university and what you can expect if you were to come and study with us. So this is me, Programme Director. The programme is essentially the broad subject area for journalism and publishing. Our two undergraduate courses, which are BA Journalism, BA Magazine Journalism and Publishing. We also have a couple of postgraduate courses as well, one in journalism, one in publishing, and they are our programme. So these are the two undergraduate courses, which you, I'm sure, have read about at least one of them and are interested in at least one of them, and which is why you're here today. BA Journalism and BA Magazine Journalism and Publishing. They're different courses. There is some overlap between them. There is some of the units are shared. Things like media law that we do is shared. Our introductory unit is shared. So there will be some, whichever course you were to join, you would be spending at least some of the time with students on the other course. But the difference between the two courses, really summed up in the name. Journalism is a course about the practice of journalism, whether that's in written journalism or audio journalism or video journalism. It's about making journalistic work. Magazine journalism and publishing is specifically looking at magazines, and because of that, you will learn a lot about journalism, about doing journalism, but also you'll learn about design and about the sort of behind the scenes world of publishing, how you plan a publication, how you find an audience for it, the more the kind of business side of things. Students on BA journalism, for their final project at the end of the 3 years, will make journalism, whether it's written journalism, audio or video journalism, for our various platforms that we have. We have an online brand with a magazine and social media called Artifact, and you would be producing journalism for the magazine, for the website, for the YouTube channel, for the social media platforms. On magazine journalism and publishing, students are more likely to create their own magazine, a zine or a magazine with a particular targeted audience. So that's, in a nutshell, the difference between the two courses. So we are London College of Communication, part of University of the Arts, London. You may know this, but University of the Arts London is a group of colleges. So there's London College of Communication, which is this college, London College of Fashion, Central St Martin's, and the art colleges of Chelsea, Wimbledon, and Camberwell. Together we form University of the Arts London. London College of Communication, which is at the Elephant and Castle in London, for those of you who know London, very central location just south of the river, is a college that concentrates on, we have 3 schools, one which is design, one which is screen, so things like film and television, but also things like animation, and the media school, which is where my programme and my courses sit. And the media school is made up of 3 programmes. There's a photography programme, a communications and media programme, which has things like advertising, public relations, so forth in it, and then the journalism and publishing programme, which we're here today to discuss. So the media school is 1/3 of London College of Communication, with the courses that I mentioned. All the courses are obviously separate, they are separate within programmes, but there's a good deal of overlap between them. I mean, one of the attractive things I think about coming and studying journalism at a college like ours is that really every student in the place is potentially someone you can collaborate with. We're all sort of in similar or related fields. When if you were to study here and then go out into the world of journalism, you would find yourself working potentially with filmmakers or with people in public relations or designers. So there's a very kind of natural sense of a community with very shared interests, which I think is a very powerful thing about being at this college. There are, although we are separate courses, there are things that we do together, or opportunities at least to collaborate with other courses. There are projects that you might find yourself working on where you'll be working with photography students, for example, or potentially design students. And there are also lots of opportunities for kind of informal collaboration. Students do set up their own projects outside the courses where they work together with students from other courses. So there's about, I guess, something like 15 undergraduate courses in the media school, similar number of postgraduate courses, and hundreds of students. So a very kind of busy and thriving environment. So journalism and publishing, as I mentioned, the 4 courses, 2 undergraduate, 2 postgraduate, and our focus is clear in our name. We are interested in the practice and the theory of journalism and publishing, and that's what we are about. And how do we think about that? I mean, one thing that's very important to us is to be, as it says in this slide, future-facing. And what do we mean by that? If I take the example of myself, I was a journalist before I came to LCC, and because I'm very old, when I started in journalism, started in newspapers, it was before the internet. So I did various jobs. I was a reporter and a correspondent and editor. But a lot of the jobs I did after the internet came along, as we got into the 2000s, I went to work for internet companies and I was doing quite different things. Those jobs didn't exist at the point when I was a student or the point when I started in the world of media. They couldn't even really have been conceived of the way in which journalists work now with social media or with iPhones or with the mixture of audio and video and text was just not something that was foreseeable when I started out. So I had to learn as my career went on to develop in different ways as different technologies came along. And that will be true of all of you as well. If you come and study with us, you'll then go out into industry and you'll be working for 30, 40, maybe even more than that years. And the industry will change in ways that none of us can predict. So our job is not to prepare you simply for the way the industry looks now, the jobs that are out there today and tomorrow and next week, but it's to think about how you are fitted for your industry in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time. So it's about gaining kind of core skills, but also gaining kind of ways of being adaptable and flexible, ways of thinking clearly about what the industry needs and how you can provide it, so that you're always riding those waves as they come along rather than being swept along by them. So I think that's a very important part of our disciplines to prepare you for that world that may be a long way into the future. Global, we are a global university. Everywhere you go, you will find students, graduates from UAL. Within UAL, there are students from, I don't know how many countries, but many, many, many different countries. It's a very, very diverse environment, which is a kind of fantastic and interesting thing. I mean, if we are doing, as we might, a seminar on freedom of the press, and we have students from London and from China and from America and India, France and Russia in the room, which would be a perfectly normal situation, you get a really interesting breadth of perspective. And I think that's something that's really valuable to us. So we get an international outlook from our students, which is a great thing. Also, if you go to any kind of major cities in the world, you will find successful UAL graduates. I went a university trip to New York not so long ago, and I was lucky enough to be invited to a UAL alumni evening in New York. An enormous number of our graduates there forming a kind of network for themselves, working in the media, advertising, newspapers, broadcast in New York, and the same will be true in many other cities. So that's a really important thing that you would take with you as a graduate of this university, that you would find, you'd undoubtedly find many other graduates of this place in the industries in which you came to work, wherever that was. So staff expertise, most of our staff in the journalism publishing program have worked in those industries. I mentioned my own background in newspapers and digital companies, and also in broadcast before I came. We have staff who worked at the BBC, staff who worked on national newspapers, staff who worked in publishing companies. So we have collectively, a real breadth of knowledge and depth of knowledge of the way the industry works. We also have staff, we take teaching very, very seriously at this university as a discipline, and we all have teaching qualifications. So it isn't just about rocking up from industry and getting on with it. We make sure that people are really trained in the discipline of teaching. We also have staff who have academic qualification. Well, we all have degrees and postgraduate degrees, but many of our staff have doctorates, conduct research into their fields. So we have, we underpin the practice that we take very importantly, the practice of journalism, the practice of publishing. We underpin that with a depth of academic and critical expertise, which I think is important too. And we're very fortunate being where we are, being in London, being in the heart of London. London, I think, is the greatest media city in the world. We have the BBC, we have our national newspapers, we have big regional offices of Google and Facebook, or Meta as it now is, Twitter, other such companies, all on our doorsteps. And that makes it very easy for us to draw in those people to come and share their expertise with students. And that might be coming in and being part of our teaching teams, or it might be coming in and giving talks to students. So we have a kind of, so as well as the expertise of staff, we make sure that we keep up to date with what's going on by drawing on our networks of industry contacts to come in and talk to students and share their knowledge and work with them in different ways. And I think that's a very important thing, and it's very embedded in the way in which we work. We are very hands-on, and that's a great quality of London College of Communication, that we're very practice-based, as we say in this university. Really, pretty much from day one, you will be doing and making. So you'll be doing journalism, working on designs, working on layouts, working on planning magazines. It's the most important way, really, of learning the skills and the craft and the discipline of journalism, of publishing. So all the way through on BA journalism, you're making journalism, you're publishing your work, you're critiquing it with colleagues on the course and with staff. When you get to year 3, you'll work on our artifact project that I mentioned at the beginning, which is a media brand with a print magazine, a website, social media channels, YouTube channel, and so forth. It's public facing. You can go and look at it now if you wish. It's had over 1 million views, I think. It's been going for 10 years. It gets quite a lot of traffic. We get social media channels, get followers. So you are, particularly when you get to year 3 on BA journalism, you're publishing your work to a wide public audience. On magazines, you'll be making magazines, printing them in our fantastic print workshops. This is another great thing about being at LCC. We have an amazing print workshop with technicians who will help you if you want to do litho printing or resew or any of the other kind of print technology, screen printing. And a lot of our students get very involved in the making, in that sense, the making of magazines, the printing of magazines. Binding books is another thing, which is you can learn those skills. We have technicians who will help with things like help you to learn some of the softwares that are useful in our area, the Adobe suite in particular. Some of you might be familiar with Photoshop or InDesign, so technicians will put on classes to help you learn that or to sharpen and improve your skills, but also work with you one-to-one on particular projects. If you're involved in a complicated video edit, then a technician will help you if you're sort of trying to get a particular effect or struggling with something. So there's a lot of real kind of hands-on work. It's the only way you get to be good at these things, is by doing it over again, by reflecting on what you've done, and then putting into practice what you've learned, reflecting on it, putting it into practice. And at the end of it, you become experts in the discipline that you are following. So industry links, I mentioned earlier on briefly that we often, probably not a week goes by in the program where there isn't on one of the courses, one of the years, someone coming in from industry to talk to students and work with students on their projects. And these might be BBC journalists or journalists from Vice or Dazed or newspapers or people who work in publishing, editors of magazines, the whole range of media people we have in as guest speakers, we call them. And then we also have people, as again I mentioned, who will come and work more deeply as part of the teaching teams of the course, who are also out in the world as practitioners, and they're bringing back their knowledge. And that's very important. We also have quite deep links with Penguin Michael Joseph, for example, who run a mentorship scheme for students on magazine journalism publishing, which is very valuable. We do quite a lot of what we call industry briefs, where we might do projects for, we've done one for The Guardian, for example. I'm trying to think of other examples. We've done things for museums where we might create material explaining their exhibitions for them, or we might make work for a newspaper, or produce a magazine for a record label. Was a project I remember the students on magazines did a couple of years ago. Projects of that kind where we are briefed by someone in industry, and the students work with the supervision of staff and the guidance of the company to make that work. And that's a very sort of good way of getting to understand what it's like to work in these companies. It's very, very valuable practical experience. We also have on both of the courses, we have opportunities for students to do internships. That happens in year 2. So you can go out and spend some time working in a company and building up experience of what it's like to work in that company, and hopefully making contacts that you can use when you leave. It's not unusual for students who get an internship to end up working in the company when they graduate. So that's another important thing that we do. We also have a thing called a diploma of professional studies, which is it's an optional thing that you can do between year 2 and year 3 on the course. It's an extra year, so your course would then be a 4-year course. And after year 2, you would do the DPS, as we call it, Diploma of Professional Studies, which you spend a year working in industry or possibly setting up your own project, which might be a magazine, or you might want to establish yourself as a freelance journalist, and you get, all the while, you get support from staff. And you spend a year doing those things and then come back and do your 3rd and final year of the course after that. So that's another quite interesting, it's quite new actually. We're doing it for the first time this year. So the first set of students will be going out and doing the DPS. And it's something that we expect to build up quite significantly over the next few years. We have an agreement with an organisation called the John Schofield Trust. It's something you might have heard of. It's a charitable organisation set up in memory of a journalist called John Schofield, who died while working as a journalist. And its role in life is to support young people who want to get work in the media, and that's particularly people from underrepresented groups. And they and our students in year 2 and year 3 can apply to be participants in this scheme, and if they're successful, they benefit from a very substantial mentorship program where they're paired up with someone working in industry, and they also get support in the form of masterclasses and all kinds of things. And that has proved, I mean, the John Schofield Trust has been going for about 20 years, and a lot of its alumni now are very, very successful and senior people in the media industry. So again, this is something that we've launched this year. We're just taking applications from current 3rd and 2nd years, and we are very, very excited really about the possibilities that will have for really turbocharging the career opportunities of some of our students. We also have, we have an event every year called Meet the Experts, where we get about 30 industry people who are established as journalists or publishers. Many of them are our graduates, in fact, and they come in and we do a kind of networking evening for 2nd and 3rd year students. Proved very popular, and again, out of that, quite a few of our students have got jobs through meeting people at that event. So our industry links are very strong, as I hope you can see from what I've just enumerated. Employability, which I think I've kind of talked about, which is really how we support you in getting a job, essentially, or as it might be, setting yourself up as an independent creative practitioner, which is something that our students increasingly do, our graduates increasingly do. So as well as the things I've mentioned, the various kind of mentorship schemes and industry links that we have, there are units on each of the course in year 2 and year 3 where we focus on employability. So we help you to think about how you present yourself as a practitioner, the practical things like getting a good CV together, writing an application letter, thinking about who you apply to, helping you to get internships, all of those things. The one at the very end of the course is called Creative Futures, and we see it very much as a kind of launch pad into industry. So those are very, very, employability is a very important part of our courses and how we think about things. It's very embedded, not just in those 2 units, but really in all of the practice units that we have. We are really thinking about, okay, how can we ensure that you are turning into journalists and into publishers who will have the skills that industry is looking for. The college itself has got a department which focuses on employability as well, and they will give you help with applications with CVs, and they run various kind of classes and discussion groups on specific aspects of the world of work, which are often very useful. So there is a lot there. So collaboration. We've mentioned collaboration in terms of collaborating with industry in various different ways. And we also have, so there's a collaborative unit where you get the opportunity to work potentially with students in other courses, or to work, as I mentioned, with industry in different ways. There's a lot of, you will find there are a lot of extracurricular opportunities to collaborate. So last year, for example, we ran a big project with the United Nations Commission for Refugees, High Commission for Refugees, where we produced a magazine about the food crisis, and students worked with displaced journalists to create articles about aspects of the food crisis, whether it's food banks or migrants who are struggling to find food, or how issues of climate were playing out in different countries around the world and might be affecting the food supply and the food networks. And we ran a big event at the college with external speakers and an exhibition of art and films, some of those made by students. So that was a big collaborative project, a big example of the kind of collaborative project that we do. So, you know, if you want to, and if you're able to, and you want to get involved in things beyond the courses, those opportunities do present themselves quite regularly and quite frequently. This is our new building. You may know that, certainly those of you who know the Eltham Castle area will remember that there used to be a great big shopping centre there, and it's been knocked down. It's now a building site, and that's being turned into the new London College of Communication, and it's just across the road from where we currently are. And we're planning to move into that building in 2026 or 2027, depending on the usual things with builders doing what they plan to do on time. Hopefully it'll be 2026. So that would mean that if you were to join us, you would spend at least some of your time in the new building. I've seen the plans, I've seen the drawings, like the one that's on the screen at the moment. It does look amazing. We are very well, my program is very well accommodated on the 9th floor. We've got a really big newsroom and, you know, some very kind of state-of-the-art classrooms. There's lots of common spaces and exciting lecture theatres and screening rooms and things. So I think it will be, we're all looking forward to moving there. I think it will be exciting, and, you know, it will enhance the experience of everybody, really. I think it'll make it a better experience. The building we're in at the moment it's kind of old. It's a great building. I like it a lot, but it is, we're sort of bulging at the seams a bit with all the students that we've got. So it will be good to have this new and very plush and exciting building when we move in there in 26, hopefully. Student and alumni successes, yeah. So we have a lot of students who've done really well in our, you know, over the last few years. You know, we have students working on national newspapers like the Mirror. So Rachel Hagan is an international journalist. The Mirror. We have students at Sky. I heard from one of our graduates recently who's doing very well on Sky News. She's organising all the interviews and booking the guests, and she was a student on our journalism course 4 years ago, I think, something like that. I heard recently from one of our graduates who's working at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organisation in Rome. She's an Italian student, Italian graduate, and she's working in communications there. I've got a couple of students at BBC, as I can think of. One who's working on the politics team as a producer. He's occasionally on screen, but he's mostly he's more behind the scenes. One of our graduates is head of content for Resident Advisor. Those of you who are music fans might know Resident Advisor. It's a it's a big website for kind of dance music, electronic music, and he was always interested in that when he was with us. And when he worked for Artifact, he wrote about that kind of stuff and went into that field. And he's recently reached the top of that organisation, so he's doing very well. Dana, who's another of our graduates, is the editor of Huffington Post. If you know Huffington Post, the big online sort of news and opinion and lifestyle site. Who else? I think of one of our graduates edits We Present, which you may know about. If you know We Transfer, which is the big sort of file transfer site, they have a site called We Present, which sort of focuses on artists and creativity and that sort of thing. And Holly is the editor of that. We've got students who've gone into branding and design. We have one who's doing very well as an art director for Alfred Dunhill, which is the kind of menswear brand. So lots of our students and alumni are doing really well. Some of the other students are working in the field of podcasting, is something that seems to be taking quite a lot of our students these days. A lot of our students go into journalism and to publishing, but a lot also find their way into things like marketing and public relations and those sorts of professions, because the skills that you learn on our courses, which are really the skills of storytelling, of telling different, telling compelling narratives, whether it's in print or in sound or in video. Those things, those skills are very, very much in demand in a whole range of disciplines. So they're obviously in demand in journalism, but they are in demand in all sorts of jobs across the media environment. We're finding a lot of our graduates now are going into roles that involve social media. So that's something that we're focusing much more on in the courses. I mentioned that Artifact has got social media channels and the students run those. So you learn quite a lot from doing that about what it's like to run an Instagram channel for a brand. And it's different from running your own Instagram channel. I mean, obviously some of the things that you will know from probably doing your own social media and being on Instagram, being on TikTok are very valuable, but there is a whole set of disciplines that are involved in running a channel for a brand, and we help students develop those through their experience on Artifact and elsewhere. So we're very proud of how well our students do. Our overall employability figures, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of these, but the universities and all courses publish employability figures, which you can find tables of called KISS data, I think, key information stats, and our employability is very good. And that's something, and that's essentially students going into graduate level jobs about a year after graduation is the sort of metric that is looked at, and we score very highly on that. And it's something we take very seriously because we know how important it is for all of you to get jobs in the field which you're passionate about. And those industries are not always easy to get into because they're competitive, and we're very proud that our students do very well in they succeed in getting those jobs. So to say a bit more about BA journalism, it's a pathway course in the sense that you will choose whether you want to do the print and online pathway or the audio video pathway, and everybody does the same year one, because I think it's important that everybody has a grounding in all the basic skills. So everybody is able to leave and make a short video, everybody's able to leave and write a decent article, but then you can specialize in year two, so you get a much deeper understanding of the one pathway or the other, whether it's audio video, whether it's print and online. And that carries on into year three. So when you're doing your final major project and working on Artifact, you will be, again, in your pathway. So if you're printing online, you'll be writing articles for the magazine and for the website. If you're an audio video, you'll be making podcasts, making videos, making, it's increasingly the case for the students, making journalistic videos for TikTok, which is a growing important thing. And we're all sort of finding our way a bit with these things, but it is possible to do good journalism in those, the very short form disciplines imposed by things like TikTok, and tell stories which are kind of compelling and fun and engaging on those platforms, but also have journalistic depth. So those are the kind of things that you will learn about. We have particular strengths on this course. We have two, so theory, although I've talked a lot about practice, it's worth talking about theory too, which is the more sort of traditionally academic side of things, involving, essay writing, time in libraries, and that kind of stuff. And we think this is really important on both the courses, because it's important to be able to do the things that we want you to be able to do the journalism, do the publishing, but it's also important to be able to think about it critically, and understand why things are done the way they're done, challenge perhaps some of the assumptions that industry has. Journalists have not always behaved well and ethically in this country. Some of you might be aware of some of the kind of, the rather grim things people in my industry have done over the years, phone hacking and all that sort of stuff. Those ethical failures came about because journalists weren't able to really critically evaluate what they were doing, whether they were doing the right thing or the wrong thing. So part of what we do is help you to become critical practitioners. We say help you to think about why journalism or publishing is the way it is, what can be done differently. So that's an important part of both courses, and you will study those things alongside the practical work that you do. You will write essays, you will do research, you'll learn how to do academic research, which may be very valuable for those of you who want to go on and do an MA, or those of you who want to have a career as an academic, which some of you may want to do. We will prepare you for that. And in the final year of both courses, you'll do a research project, which might be a kind of academic dissertation or something of that sort. So that's true on both BA journalism and magazines. On BA journalism, there are particular theory focuses on arts and lifestyle, which is a big strength of our program, partly because of the kind of university that we are. We're an arts university, so we are less focused perhaps than some institutions on news and politics and so forth, but a lot of arts and lifestyle. And we have a lot of, we have some very good staff who are, academics in that field, and will talk to you about theories of consumption and the practice of lifestyle journalism and travel journalism, and some of the ethical issues that might arise in travel journalism, whether it's about traveling to the other side of the world to write articles about it and the environmental consequences of that, or it might be about the appropriateness of people from one community writing about people from a different community. Those sorts of issues come up. So that's one theoretical focus of the course. Another theoretical focus is social justice. So again, climate comes into that, but issues of global equality and diversity and so forth. And again, we study those as serious disciplines. So you'll be able to choose on BA journalism between units on both of those things, which will inform your critical and theoretical thinking as it develops over the course. On magazines, you will study the practice of journalism. You'll learn how to write features, news stories, and so forth. You'll also learn about design, the principles of design. So you'll be able to lay out a magazine. As I mentioned, I think at the beginning, you'll also learn about the sort of organizational side of publishing. So what it means to get your own project off the ground, for example, to make a magazine, to find an audience, to do research into an audience and what it wants, to think about how a publication might be funded, to understand how, you know, how big magazine brands now, how they think about funding, whether it's through selling copies in the shops or whether it's advertising they get online, all the multiple different ways in which they engage with audiences. So those are all things that's a part of the course. You will have the opportunity to work with the people in our print shops if you want to make and print your own magazines, opportunities to do that. And again, in the final year, you will have a final major project where you will perhaps make a magazine or do something of that sort. But you'll also do a research project where you will think about perhaps an issue in magazines at the moment. Maybe it's an issue of representation, or maybe it's a more business-focused issue, and you'll be able to research that and write about that. So those are the outlines of the two courses. So here are some contacts for you. You might want to screenshot that or photograph it, because they're some useful email addresses for people who can help you with very particular queries about aspects of admissions, accommodation, student support, scholarships, and other general inquiries. So do use those emails. I'm going to answer any questions that you might have about the courses more generally. I think you've been typing them into boxes, and I think Becky is going to share them with me, and I'll do my best to answer them. So thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope you found that useful. Do have a look at the course pages on the UAL website. Do have a look at, particularly if you're interested in BA journalism, have a look at artifactmagazine.com, which is you'll be able to see the work that the third year journalism students do for their final major projects, and you'll get a sense of the breadth of the things that they cover and the way in which they cover it, which I'm sure will be interesting for you. And I look forward to perhaps seeing some of you in a year's time as our students. So Becky, I don't know if there are any questions you want to.
Hi Simon, yes. If we start off with what is the average number of students per class?
Yeah, good question. So BA journalism is the bigger of the two courses, and we probably have about 60 students per year. It will obviously vary from year to year. And magazines is more like 35. Now, it depends on what class you're doing at what time. There will be some times where you'll be in groups of that size, 60 and 35. You may even, for some things where the two courses are taught together, you might be in even bigger groups than that. But very often we'll break you up into smaller groups. And this is particularly the case with practice units where you're actually doing and making. You might find yourselves in groups of more like 20, so you can get more hands-on attention from staff. And where we have seminars as well, so a very classical thing in universities is a lecture about something, and then you break up into smaller groups with a member of staff to discuss those topics, and those seminar groups might be 10 or 15. So it varies very much depending on what we do, but most of the predominant experience of students is smaller groups, I think.
That's great, thank you. And will all of the lectures be in person, or will any teaching take place online?
Everything's in person. I mean, obviously we had the COVID experience, and we moved at some certain point all of our teaching online and some of it online. But we did our best as soon as we could to bring it back in person, and everything's in person now. And there's absolutely no intention to go back to online, obviously, unless a COVID type situation happens. So no, everything will be in person, face to face. We try and organise the curriculum because we know that, I mean, the majority now of our students work while they're on the course, in other words, have jobs to earn money. So we try and organise things in blocks so that you don't have to come in every single day for a few hours. So you'll come in sort of 3 days, typically for the whole day, and then that gives you a bit of time to, if you need it to work, or simply to work independently on your projects, or go to the library, or whatever it might be. But everything is in person.
Perfect, thank you. And other than Artifact, is there anywhere else that we might be able to see some students' work?
Yeah, well, I definitely encourage you to look at Artifact, because there's literally hundreds of pieces of student work on there for BA journalism. But if you look at the course pages, the UAL course pages, you will see examples of student work on both courses, and there's stories about students and graduates. So that's a good place to get a picture of some of the things that they've done.
Next question, so how much, you kind of mentioned being in 3 days a week. So what would the kind of contact hours be? How much work would you expect a student to do outside of those contact hours?
Yeah, good question. I mean, again, it depends a little bit. It varies from unit to unit. But I think typically we're expecting students to do about 30 hours a week, of which, I mean, and let's say in year one, of which half of that might be in class, and then the rest of that would be, perhaps in the library researching an essay, or it might be going out and doing some journalism, or working on the plans for a magazine. So those sorts of numbers, but it will vary depending on the particular thing you're doing, the unit you're doing at the time, and also where you are in the course. Typically, as you go on through the course, we try and encourage more independent working, because that obviously helps you prepare for for the outside world a little bit. So, but in year one, I think 30 hours would be fairly typical.
Perfect, thank you. And then final question for the evening. Are there any internship opportunities available?
Yeah, absolutely. So both of the courses have got a unit in year two where there's the opportunity to, and you're supported to find internships if that's what you want to do. And a lot of students do take that up. Some students do internships, say, during holiday time, and we support that as well. And we also have, as I think I mentioned during the presentation, we have the Diploma of Professional Studies, which is essentially a kind of sandwich year, I suppose, between year two and year three, where students who want to can choose to spend a year in industry doing internships, or indeed working on a personal project like setting up their own magazine.
Perfect, thank you. And that wraps up our questions for the evening. So yes, I will end the webinar there. Thank you so much, Simon, for taking us through the courses in such detail. That was very helpful. And I hope everyone has got their questions answered.